Stephanie Agnew. She's the Assistant Director of Parent Place, Parent Coach, and Preschool Consultant. And Stephanie coordinates engaging programs for family, developing interactive online workshops, and consulting individually with families on a wide variety of parenting and child development issues. An expert in early childhood education, Stephanie taught in Palo Alto area preschool for 20 years and owned a preschool for 5 years. She received additional professional training at the Bing Nursery School at Stanford University, where she earned her bachelor degree.
Thanks very much.
When we talked, you mentioned children need different things at different age.
Mm.
What do children need the most in nursery, elementary, middle, and high school?
I've worked with families with children of all ages for many, many years, and my own daughters I raised here in Palo Alto. I've always had a real interest in education for children at different ages and the values, the great qualities that they get out of each different stage. Preschool age children, being children 0 to 5 or 6 years old, are really needing security and they're needing social emotional skills. What children get best out of their preschool experience is an understanding of being part of a group, of learning to like being around other children their own age, and also learning how to trust adults who aren't their primary caregivers, and understanding that being part of a community like that is a fun thing to do. So preschool should be fun, it should be safe, it should be nurturing, and it should give children an opportunity to really explore with their whole bodies and hearts and minds. Because what we know about really young children is that they learn in a very integrated fashion. We don't separate out their academic skills from their social skills, especially when they're that young. In elementary school, being children from kindergarten through 5th grade, 5, 6-year-olds till about 10, is that they're learning to love learning. This is when they start to recognize that they're learning new things. When children are really little, they're just creating stuff. They're not really aware that they're learning something new. But when they get into elementary school, they start needing to apply themselves to learn to read, to learn to do mathematics, and they start to recognize that this is a process. Ideally, in a good elementary school experience, they love that process and they feel successful and good at it. And I think what helps most in that kind of a situation is a sense of community and a sense of belonging in that community. So children elementary aged are still very connected to their parents, and they're also becoming extremely social and very connected to their peers and what's happening with their peers. So I think a really good elementary school education combines all of these things while creating a sense of community that includes families and parents. And when I work with parents around making choices around schools, I really encourage them to look for school communities that feel like joining a club. Because when a parent can get involved in that school community, to whatever degree one has time for, then they can enhance the experience for their child and help their child learn that being part of a school community is important and valued in the family, and also a really pleasant and enjoyable experience for the children. At middle school, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, children are really starting to learn how to be good students. They're learning organizational skills, they're learning time management skills, they're learning responsibility for managing their tasks and their assignments and things like that. So a good middle school is one that really focuses on teaching those kinds of skills with children. And parents become less involved because at that stage, children are starting to separate more from their parents, and they need that autonomy, and they need to be more connected to their peers. And this is why it's so important, I think, for parents to be very engaged with their children and their school experience when they're younger, so that once they start to get older and start to naturally separate, you can still maintain a sense of connection, and it's still acceptable to your children that you get to know their friends' parents, that you help out at school periodically or chaperone dances or things like that, so that you can keep a connection even though your children are really wanting to have separation. So it's sort of a little bit of a balancing act there. And then once they get into high school, and here in the US, typically that's 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, that's where I think children start to figure out what they're really good at, what they're really interested in, and the kinds of things that they might want to pursue or explore later in college or maybe even in a career. So we really want kids at the high school level to be in schools that have a lot of different kinds of opportunities for them, where they might be interested in sports, or they might be really into high-level academics, or they might be interested in clubs or fine arts or performing arts or music or debate or community service or lots of different kinds of experiences in addition to the typical academic type things. I think that's one of the unique things about an American education compared to what I understand about other places in the world, is that school becomes really the hub of the family and of the developing child in terms of all of their interests. It's not just about academics here in the US.
I can relate to that. The families are a lot more involved in schools. Would you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of public versus private schools in terms of teaching style, community, family involvement? I think that's a question that in many people's mind.
So I'm a big fan of both. I think both school options are really great, and I think we're very fortunate, especially here in the Bay Area, to have a lot of variety and a lot of options, both in the public and the private school sector. I really encourage parents to look at their school choice based on their whole family's goals and needs and resources and availability. We're fortunate here, especially in the Silicon Valley area, to have great public schools in most of the areas where we live. And I think the real benefits of public schools are that your child isn't going to school in their community where they live. So socially, they're going to meet friends and develop relationships with people who are part of their community. And it makes it much easier to continue to develop those relationships, I believe, as a family in particular, when the people that you're interacting with are close by and you run into them spontaneously at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, or when you go out to dinner, or when you're out at a park, or if you're joining community-oriented sports teams like the rec department, basketball, baseball, soccer kinds of programs. Those kids who are going to be on those teams are kids typically who are living in the community near where you live. And then if you're in public school, you're also in school with these kids. So you get lots of different opportunities to make connections. And I think that is, especially for younger children, a great thing and something that should be definitely considered as a bonus. The downside to public schools are that class sizes are typically fairly large. These days, 25 to 30 kids in an elementary school class is not unusual at the public school level. And of course, as you get into private school, as you get into the upper level grades in middle and high school, the class sizes get even larger. And then also the overall community is big. So you've got a lot of kids at the school. And for some children, that's really exciting. And children who are really outgoing, who are independent, who are self-confident, who are assertive, who know how to speak up for what they need, and who make friends pretty easily and enjoy a lot of variety and different kinds of people to get to know. I think public schools are ideal for that kind of experience. As far as the academics go, I think that academics are strong in most of our public schools, and our teachers in California are trained very well, and public school teachers have a very consistent, good level of education and background in teaching to be qualified to do the work. The difference is that you have a wide range of socioeconomics in some communities in particular. So children coming into public schools come in with a lot of different backgrounds. And some of them come from, families that have a lot of resources and have had a lot of exposure and a lot of great support and help. And others come in from lower economic sorts of communities where they haven't had as many benefits. And so there's a big gap in the learning oftentimes, and especially in the younger grades. it takes some time for kids to catch up. In certain communities, the academic pace may not be quite as quick in public schools because we're needing to give those other kids time to catch up. But again, I also think that there's benefits there because we're exposing our kids to more of a real world type of experience with kids from all different kinds of backgrounds and more multiculturalism and more socioeconomic diversity and all of that, which I think is part of the whole learning process and definitely good for our global society that we all live in. So private schools, the benefits of that is especially for children who are quieter, slower to warm, a little bit less assertive, who really like to make close connections to their teachers, who do better in a smaller learning environment that is more intimate and where kids can get more individualized attention. That's where a private school education can really benefit. And for younger kids who are still developing and still kind of developing a voice and developing their self-confidence, sometimes being in a private school environment at the elementary school level can really help them to build their self-confidence. At the upper grades, in the middle and high school level, what a private education can give is, again, more accountability, closer connection to all the students so that nobody sort of falls through the cracks and doesn't go unnoticed if they aren't keeping up or if they need extra help. Teachers are more accessible in private schools typically to students so kids can get extra help. And the class sizes are smaller, so everybody is more noticed and everybody is paid closer attention to. But for some children, they don't need that, even at the upper grade levels, and they actually don't want it. You know, some teenagers like a certain sense of anonymity, and so they do better in a public school environment, or kids who really need much broader sort of exposure to socially to different kinds of kids might do better in a public school environment. But the other thing about private schools is that they aren't all the same. In public schools, all teachers have to have a certain level of education. And then you may get a few who have higher levels of degrees and such, but every teacher in California has to have a standardized teaching credential. In the private schools, that's not true. So not all private schools have teachers with really high levels of education. Some private schools do and have teachers with, even PhDs or master's degrees in various subjects and such. But when you're looking at private schools, you have to look carefully. Also, you get what you pay for in private schools. So the less expensive private schools are not going to give you as good of an education as the more expensive private schools. And when you live in a public school district where the public schools perform very well, if you can't really afford to pay for a more expensive private school where the class sizes are actually smaller than they would be in public school, then I think it's better to just stick with public school. And unless you're looking for something more specialized in terms of an education, like a religious background or something like that, if that's a value to a family, then yes, being at a religious-based school where the prices are oftentimes lower, that's a value that they want their children to have anyway. But if what you're really looking for is the highest quality education, I think you do have to pay attention to class size, especially at the elementary school level. I think that's what makes the biggest difference between public and private schools, is smaller classes and more personalized attention to the child.
Another thing I noticed about private schools is they have inquiry-based experiential learning front and center.
Mm-hmm.
But also you also have some very academic-focused private schools that are still kind of traditional teacher-led.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment a little bit on these two styles of learning? One of the things people talk about the most is in those experiential learning, a lot of time they don't have tests. And that's a double-edged sword, I see it. What's your thought on that?
So I know it's really hard, especially for parents, because parents need confidence that their children are learning what they need to learn. And testing is the way that most parents recognize being a way of having that accountability and having that documentation that their children are actually learning. So that's where the experiential, more project-based learning environments can be a little unsettling and a little scary for a lot of parents. But research is really showing that our more traditional educational system of teacher-directed learning with testing as being the main form of recognition of accomplishment and achievement is really not suitable for our current and future world of working people. That we need people who think for themselves, that we need people who are problem solvers, that we need people who are creative and who are collaborative and who don't need to be told exactly what to do and exactly what to learn and just be able to regurgitate those facts. Our previous education system, what we consider traditional education system, was based on a much more industrialized type of society where most people became factory workers or assembly line workers or simple business types of experiences. And what we know now is that the working world is totally different, and it's much more about thinking outside the box, about looking to the future, about trying new things, and about being creative and collaborative and working together with other people.
There's a lot of talks about how AI is going to take over jobs in the future, especially white-collar jobs. What do you think is the most important skills for the kids today to spend time learning?
I think that skills of problem solving and trying new things and working in collaboration and being resilient, not giving up when something doesn't go your way or when something seems hard, looking for a different way of doing something. I think those are the types of skills that are going to make a person most successful in later life in all kinds of ways, in relationships, in business, in personal life, in work, because we don't know what the world's going to look like 20 years from now or 30 years from now when today's kids are adults. The world has changed so much in the last 30 years since my children were born. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have laptops. I mean, it's just been a complete technological revolution. I don't think it's slowing down. I think it's only just going faster. So we need kids who are flexible. We need to help kids develop flexibility. We need to help them be able to try new things and to pivot and go in different directions. And if there's anything that this pandemic has taught us, it's that we can carry on even when everything that we thought was supposed to be wasn't. When something completely unimaginable happens that one would never expect to have ever had to experience. And I think it's been a great lesson in flexibility and resilience for all of us and for the whole world together to have experienced this. So I think that the education system needs to continue to help kids develop these skills. And I don't think they learn them by being taught to memorize facts and figures and regurgitate them in a test. I think they learn these skills by asking questions and by trying new things and by having experiential experiences with a foundation of basic skills and knowledge that help to put it all into perspective.
I know you're doing a lot of grandparenting nowadays.
Yes, I am.
Compared to the last generation, maybe when you were parenting your daughters, this generation of parents, they are doing a much harder job. We're working more and then we're feeling worse. There's a lot of anxiety in parenting. Everything is like a goal. I think there's awareness that you need to learn more to become a better parent, but everything's very goal-oriented and it doesn't feel very fun. I would love to hear, how is it different that you're grandparenting now versus how you are parenting your daughters? Because I'm sure you think a lot about the environment and how you feel about interacting with the children and what's important to them. And how old are your grandchildren now?
I have 4 grandchildren. I have 6-year-old boy-girl twins and a 2.5-year-old grandson in one family with my younger daughter. And then my older daughter has a 10-month-old little boy. And I spend one day a week with each of the families. I totally understand what you've just said, not only from my own career and professional experience of having done this for Parents Place and the Center for Children and Youth for so long. We are definitely seeing a much higher level of anxiety in parents than we used to. And the kinds of concerns that parents bring in for consultations are getting more and more serious. It's a kind of a thing where a little bit of knowledge is a bad thing. When I was a parent and I was a young parent, I learned a lot about child development. So I was aware of what it meant to be around young children. But I was blissfully ignorant, even still, around a lot of concerns that I think parents are way more aware of now, thanks to people like me. Parent education was really just starting when my children were born in the 80s. There is an organization not far from here in Palo Alto called the Children's Health Council, where they kind of started the trend towards parent education, and the whole industry has just gone bonkers ever since in terms of books being written, and research being done, and nowadays all these blogs and podcasts and everything that parents have access to, with people telling them what to think about, what to be worried about, how to be better at what they're doing. And I think also that the 24/7 nature of professional life now, with email and texting and everything and Zoom, just being accessible 24/7, it really makes it hard for parents to compartmentalize. And the reality is children need attention. Depending on their age, they need a lot of undivided presence and attention. Today's parents are trying to juggle too many things all at once. Being with their kids and answering emails or texts on their phones at the same time. So I think that it really requires a lot of discipline on the part of parents to really focus on their children. But I also think that in order to make parenting more fun, that parents need to try not to be perfect, for one thing. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect anything. We just want to try to do the best we can in any particular moment and give ourselves a break and understand that we're human and that some days are better than others. And the good news is that children are really resilient. Dr. Becky, who writes the book Good Inside, she talks a lot about parents giving themselves a break, parents recognizing that nobody needs to be perfect, and also that you can always repair. If you make a mistake, if you lose your cool with your children, or you don't do something as well as you might like in a particular day, you can acknowledge it and you can share that with yourself. You can share it with your partner. You can share it with your kids. And just that process of going through repair means a lot and really does help your child develop. I also think we need to just have more fun with our kids by not thinking every minute has to be spent doing something productive. They don't have to be in every sports team or going to every birthday party they're invited to, or always spending the day doing something you think is particularly valuable and important for your children. Children love to be part of our everyday life. They like to go on errands. They like to help you clean the house. They like to do those sorts of things too. And when we include our kids more in our actual daily life and have fun just doing that, I think we can be more relaxed with it as well.
It feels like so much work with raising children and so much anxiety. I feel sometimes that we're missing the point. Why do you have children in the first place? I often feel like the relationship between parents and kids are more important for both parties than any achievement that the children can attain.
Right. But like a lot of important things that we do in our lives, it does require work, different periods of time, and then you reap the benefits of that hard work later. Putting in the time and effort with your children when they're young to make good connections and to help them learn to self-regulate and to set clear boundaries and limits and to work with them in making important decisions in their lives as they grow up, depending on what they're going through. All of that contributes to a really valuable relationship with your children when they become adults. And I'm very fortunate to have that experience with my children and to be still close by so that we can really reap the benefits of all of that hard work and have a really strong relationship where our kids want to be around us and where we have access to our grandchildren and we can have this period of time in our lives where we can really, really enjoy each other. So it was worth it.
The parents are very hard on themselves because they try to be perfect. Not only they need to do a perfect job, the kids need to be perfect. With what results we can tell ourselves saying, okay, I did a pretty good job at parenting.
I think every family, every parent, every family unit is unique and different. So I wouldn't say that there really is one concrete goal that anybody should strive toward. But I think that if we can really focus on getting to know our children for who they really are, recognizing their own inner qualities and their temperament, and listen to our children so that we're really open to allowing them to become the people that they feel like they want to be, definitely with guidance along the way from parents, and definitely with exposure to lots of, like I said about the education system, exposure to a lot of different kinds of things that might be interesting to them. But really with the focus of, I'm not here to create a particular kind of person as a parent. I'm here to help this little human grow up to be the kind of human that he or she is destined to be, that he or she will want to be as a person. And I want to do everything I can to support this little human in that process. Now, that doesn't mean just keeping them happy all the time and giving them everything they want and never telling them if they step over the line at all. Because children of all ages, people of all ages, they need boundaries. They need to know what's expected of them. And as a parent, that's your job for your kids while they're in your house, is to set that environment up that says, okay, this is what's really important to us in our family. And these are the kinds of behaviors and these are the kinds of values that we have. And this is how we're going to help you grow within this boundary, because that's where children get a sense of security. But as they get older and maybe want to go in some different directions, we need to be open and we need to be flexible and we need to think about, okay, how will that be for you? And maybe this is what is really right for you. And so I'm going to support you through that, whether it means doing an alternative form of education, or whether it means going into a career that is something that you never imagined a child wanting to be interested in doing, or developing relationships with people that are different than what you imagined or you thought your child should have relationships with. So I think that is probably what I would think is the most valuable thing a parent can do, is to be there for their child, get to know their child, be open to your child developing into the kind of human that they want to be, while at the same time, being clear about what your values and your standards are as well.
I also want to ask you, with your own children or now with the grandchildren, what's the idea and belief or thoughts that help you get through the toughest times?
This too shall pass. I say that a lot, and I say that to my kids a lot. They're only 6 or they're only 2. Don't assume that the behaviors that you see right now are the way they're going to be for the rest of their lives. I think too often parents project into the future.
There's a lot of interest and resources for children's mental health, but not for the parents. A lot of parents are anxious and they're easily irritated, and that would impact their relationship with the children. Any advice for these parents or any resources?
Us.
Okay.
That's what we do here at the Center for Children and Youth in Parents Place. I mean, if there's anything that myself and my colleagues really focus on, it's in helping parents, empowering them, and helping them feel better about the job they're doing as a parent. And a lot of times, the anxiety and the stress that we feel about parenting comes from a lack of understanding about why our children are acting in the way they are, or what's going on for them developmentally that causes them to behave in some of the ways that can be so frustrating and annoying, especially when kids are younger, but also in their teenage years. So that's what my colleagues and I really focus on, is helping parents understand their kids better, and then also realize that they don't have to be perfect and that they can try there are strategies and different kinds of approaches to things that might be helpful. And oftentimes a little bit of that kind of support goes a really long way to help parents feel more confident and more comfortable in their role.
So at the Parent Place here, you offer coaching to parents. What's your favorite story in coaching a parent? Maybe through that story, we can learn about how coaching feels like.
Absolutely.
looks
Well, one of the really unique qualities about our agency and the Center for Children and Youth is that we have really wraparound services, not only in parent coaching and consultation, but also in parent education through workshops, and also in clinical services for children, and also for clinical services for adults through the Jewish Family and Children Services, which is our umbrella to our whole organization. And one of my favorite stories is one that a family that I've known for about 8 years, and they came initially as a couple who were unfortunately breaking up with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it was a heartbreaking breakup. And they came asking for support about how to talk to their kids about the change in their family dynamic, and how to organize their lives, and how to better communicate between the two of them for the benefit of their children. Both parents really dedicated in doing what was absolutely best for their children in spite of their own emotional situations that were happening for them. And so I started working with them around that. A few years later, one of the parents got remarried, and the other parent in that relationship also had a child who was about the same age as the younger child in the original couple. So then we had a blended family, and I helped them work through that. And then periodically throughout the time, they would also come in for just normal parenting kinds of questions, like, how do I get my kids to sleep better? They're having trouble going to bed at night, or they're having a lot of sibling relationship issues, and especially as the family blended, helping these kids all get to know each other and feel good being part of a blended family. And through that, I actually started working also with the other co-parent in the new marriage. So now we had all these different parents working together. And again, all of them being totally focused on how to really do the best work they could for their kids, which was so heartwarming for me. And then it extended from there as the kids started to get a little bit older. They had a few different things that required a little bit of clinical support for the kids, therapy for short periods of time, and we were able to provide that for them as well because we have that as part of our organization. And so I really love this story as a good example of the breadth of kinds of services that we can help parents with. You know, you and I met to talk about schools, but that's a small part. It's a pretty big part of my particular practice, but I have 10 other colleagues who also do consultation, and I also do consultation and coaching on pretty much any type of struggle that parents could be experiencing that they would like some support with their children about. And throughout the age ranges as well. I tend to focus mostly on young children, sort of preschool and early elementary, but I have colleagues who focus mostly on teens and young adults and school-age children. We work together as a team, so we collaborate with each other as families get older. Sometimes we, transfer families with children to a different person who might have an expertise that one of us didn't have. So it's a really great way of supporting families in a holistic sort of approach.
We talked about how kids need different things throughout different stages. what do you think is the most important thing or the biggest blind spot for parents in different stages of the kids' lives?
Well, I think, as you mentioned just a moment ago, keeping your eye on the joy of it, focusing on the wonder of it and watching these humans grow and develop. It's really pretty amazing when you stop to think about it, how the human body and brain and heart and soul develop. And as parents, you have the front row seat if you just stop and watch and take the time to notice. Oftentimes we get so busy in just doing life and accomplishing tasks. Are our kids going to bed on time? Are they eating the right thing? Are they sleeping the right amount? Are they behaving well? Are they getting good grades? Are they, being successful in sports? Are they making friends? That's all important too, but we need downtime. We need time to just sit together and just watch and notice the wonder of what is happening throughout the age ranges. Even as they get to be teenagers, I think sitting in the car when you're driving your teenager around, to things when they have their friends in the car and just sitting quietly and listening to all the conversation that's going on in the background. It's a great way of understanding more about what's going on in their lives that they might not ever tell you if you sat face to face. Or sitting down on their bedside as you tuck them in at night, even as a 15 or 18-year-old, and just sitting there, not asking a lot of questions. How was your day? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. But just sit there for a few minutes and you'll be amazed at what they might tell you just come out of the blue when you didn't ask about it. If you just wait, for 10 or 15 minutes and not be just, okay, now I've got to move on to the next thing. So it's slowing down and making time for that emptiness, that empty space in your life that will really help your kids and I think help you as a parent get more enjoyment out of the process too.
That's so wonderful. I think we need a book called The Joy of Parenting.
Actually, there is a book.
Okay, what's the name of the book?
It's called The Joy of Parenting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's kind of an old one. It was a great book. I'm not even sure if it's still in print. There may be something more current of similar, but there actually was a book by that exact title.
Any books you remember reading or you recommend actually talk about the joy of parenting?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good books out there. I think thinking back in my own role as a parent when my kids were little, a book that is still in print and I still think is really valuable is one that's called How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maislish. It's a really, really good book even still today. But a more current book that I've really been enjoying is this book by Dr. Becky called Good Inside. It covers a lot of great information about child development, brain development, a lot of research, and also just really a lot of encouragement for parents that helps you feel good about your child and also helps you feel good about yourself.
That's
so
wonderful.
I really recommend that too.
That's wonderful. We'll link the book titles in the show notes. I think these are incredible resources for the listeners. Tell us about your routine with your grandchildren. Kind of how do you spend a day? I know you have the older ones, you see them after school.
I do what my daughters tell me to do. For the most part. It's really important, I think, to let my daughters know they're the experts in their own children. But in terms of the other kinds of things, with my 10-month-old, we spend a lot of time just on the floor and moving around. He's all about movement right now. He's going to start to walk like any day. And so it's about giving him the space that's safe to practice that. So we do go to Gymboree, which was something I was able to do with my kids. It's still around, although not nearly as much as it used to be. But fortunately, we have one really close to where my daughter lives. And I love doing that with him because it's a lot of great physical activity and combining with some music and a little bit of socialization. He is in daycare the rest of the week, so I don't worry too much about him not being around other kids. With the older kids, with my 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, we go exploring. We go to different parks. We go hiking up in Marin where we live. Love to be outdoors in the good weather, just love to spend time outside. But he also loves to go on errands. He's a great little companion for taking the dry cleaning to the dry cleaners and talking to the lady behind the desk at the dry cleaners, or going to the grocery store if I need to do some errands. So it doesn't have to be some sort of special event every time we get together. With the older ones, and we actually had all 3 of the older kids together with us for the weekend while their parents were away. We spend time just playing in the house. We're doing some construction projects at the house, and I collected a lot of wood scraps. And they had so much fun doing woodworking with my husband this weekend, just building stuff and practicing with nails and hammers and things like that, which they don't get to do very often, and wood glue. And we go biking a lot. So I like to just be physically active with the kids a lot. And also take them out to restaurants sometimes, which is a challenge. They don't always sit still and quiet the whole time, but I think it's a fun and important activity and something that they learn from.
When you spend a weekend with the older group of kids, how do you keep them busy for a while so you have downtime, especially when you're indoors in the house? It seems like they need your attention all the time. So
Yeah.
What would you do in that situation?
It's exhausting. They need a lot of attention. And even when they do get themselves occupied, doing something else, especially between a 6 and a 2-year-old, oftentimes things go awry and it turns into something not too safe or not too happy for somebody. So it requires a lot of intervention, but it doesn't require me to be sitting there doing absolutely nothing else the whole time. As long as I find we intersperse it with time when I'm really focused, present with them, and then time when I need to go make dinner now, or I need to go, feed the dogs or something else, they know that they can be occupied. But we don't stay in the house all day by any means. With kids this age, they would be going stir crazy or yammering to turn the television set on or something like that. I was so proud this last weekend. Nobody asked for TV the whole weekend, and I thought, that's a success. It means we had the right balance of things to do. Now, we did have some screen time because we took them to the movie theater for the first.
Okay.
We went to see a Disney film in the movie theater, which was fun for us. We took them to a classic Disney movie and a first time for them, and that made it special. So they did have some screen time, but they didn't ask for any other screen time the whole weekend. I thought, hey, that meant they were well occupied and feeling like they had enough fun things to do.
What's your typical screen time for the children?
I try to encourage parents to, especially with kids this young, to use screen time for their own device, not to just have screens on indefinitely, but to use it very purposefully. You need a little time to yourself, then let your kids have screen time for that period of time, because it will occupy them and keep them in one place so that they're not getting in trouble doing something else. But I don't think they should have it for more than about 30 to 45 minutes in a stint, and for a 2-year-old even less. But the longer kids stay on screens, the harder it is for them to disconnect. So I think it's better to have shorter periods of time to use screens with breaks in between. Like even if you're on an airplane for 6 hours going across the country, let your kids watch the tablet or whatever for half an hour or 45 minutes, unless they actually want to watch an actual movie. If they're older, and they want to watch a movie, great, but then turn it off and have to do something else for a while. Even if it's only for a half hour or 45 minutes or so, just take a break so that your brain kind of recalibrates, and then you can go back and watch some more. What I really see, and what I think the research is pointing to, is that long sort of focus of attention, getting all that visual stimulation, which creates pretty much an addictive type of an experience for a young person's brain.
Lots of dopamine.
Yeah, and the more they do it, the less capable they become of doing anything else. So we need to use it purposefully and then monitor it and treat it like a privilege, like any other privilege. If you want to use it, you need to follow certain rules and have responsibility. And one of those means turning it off when it's time and only watching what I say you can watch and not getting into too many other things that you shouldn't do. And YouTube, I think, needs to be avoided at all costs for young children, if at all possible. Setting up whatever kinds of limitations you can on the devices to keep your kids off YouTube, because from what my experience in working with lots of parents, the kinds of exposures kids are getting by accident on YouTube is just not good for anybody. So there's so much content. There's so much content that is not YouTube. Just use other stuff.
Is there any resources of good content for children to view on television, good programs?
I would refer parents who are wondering about that to Common Sense Media. That's a really great organization and website that ranks and rates every kind of media for children, all kinds of media, music, games, video, TV, every kind of media you can imagine. And it's all rated based from child development experts and researchers in brain development and things like that. So I would refer to that. But there's so much content that's out there, and I can't pretend to be up to date with every single thing. Some of the stuff my grandkids watch, I think, looks absolutely mindless. And some of it's really great. I mean, and they love a lot of educational things and nature type stuff. So they get a wide variety of things. But I think the most important thing is learning how to use it responsibly and not letting it take over one's life.
Is there any purchase you made recently that's $100 or less that you think it's kind of a very good purchase in terms of parenting? This is either for your grandchildren or maybe for your children.
The stuff that I enjoy the most is the more open-ended kinds of things. So, for example, this last weekend with my 3 older grandkids, 2 and 6, Play-Doh was the thing that kept everybody happy for a really long time because they could all do it at a different level. We have lots of different tools to use with the Play-Doh and stuff like that. So the 6-year-olds are actually making stuff with it while the 2-year-old is just squeezing it and squishing it and, trying not to put it in his mouth and stuff like that. But they love it. It's colorful and it feels good. Sand and water play, anywhere you can go where you can get sand and water play, I think is also really, really great for all ages of people. Why going to the beach is such a good kind of thing for families to do, because everybody can find something fun about being in a sand and water kind of situation.
What's your biggest takeaway raising your daughters now they're grown-ups?
Helping them develop relationships, I think, has been my greatest joy. I feel so lucky and so happy for them that they're both in meaningful relationships that really make them happy, not every day of the week all the time, because relationships require work and effort and not everything is happy and easy all the time either. It had a lot to do with our family and our extended family and friends and being social in that way and just really developing strong relationships while they were growing up and encouraging that, making that a big priority in our lives. They were lucky enough to have grandparents around when they were little too, so I think that's a value that they still hold true, which makes it great for us. So I think that family, friends, a social world that encourages good relationships is probably what I'm most proud of in terms of my family and my kids.
If people want to find out more about you, your work, or your teams, where can they find you?
Our website is CCY, which stands for the Center for Children and Youth, at jfcs.org. And on that website, we have all kinds of information about all the services that we provide and all of my colleagues and bios about everybody who works with us. If you're interested in a consultation, you can go to the website and there's a place where you can enter information about being interested in a consultation that will go to our wonderful intake coordination team, who find out exactly what your concerns are, and then we help you get connected to the person that will be the best person for you to help you.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
You're so welcome.